From the earliest days, the Western has been the bread and butter movie of the film industry. From 1913 to the present, Hollywood has produced over 2,000 feature films on cowboys and Indians. The idea that Indians are quaint and strange but not quite human is an idea created and perpetuated by Hollywood movies.
Hi, I'm Will Sampson. The movies have consistently shown the Indian as a savage warrior, a renegade, and a killer of innocent pioneer women and children, and a merciless scalper who used the most cruel means in his vicious attack against the white man. That is the legacy that Hollywood has left the Indian people. It is our worldwide image. This is the fifth in a series of programs dealing with how and why it came about, and examining the effects that these Hollywood images, which are seen nightly on television and movie screens throughout the world, is having on our people, especially our youngsters. You know, for most people, the Native American remains invisible unless he looks like the Hollywood Indian.
We waited years for you to say that you were wrong to have pictured us this way.
And Apache, Blackfoot Sioux, they're vicious killers, all of them. They ain't even human.
The plain fact is that the Redskins will steal and hunt and murder, and the whites will work.
War's their religion.
Murdering savages.
The wind's in the right direction. I can smell engine a mile off.
Comanches mate their women early.
Did you ever see what Indians do when they get a white woman?
They sure would like to have me that little paint.
And I sure would like to kill me an Indian.
Treatment of Indian people by Hollywood is absolutely vicious, and second only to the diseases that were inflicted upon us by the settlers and by the United States government. I would say that Hollywood ranks as one of the most vicious institutions which has hurt Indian people.
I think it's very difficult for people outside the culture to really understand why there are problems. I think what's really happened to Indians on films is you've had people who may know technical into films that know nothing of human beings or history, and just really put their fantasies on film so that people not in the movies coming into Indian communities have all these built-in stereotypes about what they think they're going to encounter in the Indian culture. And so there's tremendous use of Indian as image, but not grappling with any substance of what Indian life is.
In the 1970s, the movie industry has been busy renobilizing the savage. Winterhawk begins as if it were going to deal seriously with Indian life, but the film quickly turns into a fantasy romance. The young chief Winterhawk, his two white captives, and their pursuers all take a back seat to the pictorial beauty of the horses and the land. Charles Bronson plays an invincible Apache in Chato's Land. Seen by some critics as an allegory on the Vietnam War, it's the story of a posse uncertain of their mission. Chato, the shadow guerrilla fighter, leads them deeper and deeper into Indian country. He picks them off one by one and eventually kills them all. Richard Harris, as a man called Horse, acts out the fantasy of a white man becoming an Indian chief. An English lord who wanders into Sioux country and gets captured, he proves his mettle by doing everything better than the Indians. When the Sioux chief is killed in this battle, Harris takes over. He instantly has braves firing in the manner of English bowmen, needing only the presence of his command and an Indian translator to show them how it's done.
tried. We've tried many different times to go to the president of Screen Actors Guild. We've tried to meet with, we have met with the president of Columbia Pictures and with many of the network officials who program the movies onto TV. And we've offered a number of suggestions to them and how they could correct the stereotyping of Indian people. But they haven't. They have absolutely, as a matter of fact, some of the treatments are getting worse.
As president of the SAG Committee on Minorities, can you do anything to change Hollywood stereotyping of Indians?
No, not really. The basic function of the Minorities Committee is to make sure that there's not that many distortions. There are 4 groups involved: the black, the Chicano, the Asian American, and the American Indian. And the American Indian, in my opinion, has the toughest row to hoe, and we have the most to try to reach for, to gain. Our end of the industry has been just totally distorted all the way down the line. We've been overlooked. We've been left out. Now we're trying to change some of those things, but it's a question of education for producers, directors, and writers. The ideal situation is if you can talk to the writers first, which our committee has. We've talked to writers, producers, directors, casting people, and they all realize the situation of the American Indian, but that's about where it is. There's not a lot of changes been made.
I think there must be changes because I think by and large, most American people, particularly young people, realize that the old treatment of the American Indian was false, was based on non-truth instead of truth. It was a distortion, and it was an insult to an entire race of people. But I'm afraid, Will, that the only way it's going to come, that is, the change is going to come about, is not to depend on the good intentions of the white people, and I include myself, because we cannot really understand the Indian mind. The only man who can understand the Indian mind is the Indian, and therefore he must take a much more prominent part in whatever Hollywood does that involves Indians from now on.
These teepees aren't in Montana or the Dakotas, but just outside Cologne, Germany. Germany has about 60 Indian friendship clubs like this, and there are many more throughout France, Belgium, Switzerland, and East Germany. In 1973, this club sent a petition to President Nixon supporting the American Indian movement and protesting our government's treatment of the Indian.
Dr. Edgar Eich is an attorney for a large insurance firm here. Dr. Eich, when did your interest in Indians begin?
Oh, it began when I was a child. I read the books of the famous author Karl May. His books are not very realistic, but they gave the impulse.
Where did you get the quills for your costume?
I got it in Denver, in the Western Trading Post. I bought 3 hides and brought them with me to Germany. Picked out the quills.
And how long did it take you to make this?
Oh, it took about 3/4 of a year, every evening feeding.
Do you find that the Indian tribal ways or religion has an impact on your life?
Yes, that may be. I think that I learned something from the Indians, but it is hard to say. It's a matter of feeling.
How do you find the way the Indians are depicted in Hollywood movies?
Oh, I'm not very lucky because the Hollywood shows the Indians not as they really were.
Mm-hmm. Do you find the German films on Indians are more accurate?
No, they are even worse.
thought if you couldn't do anything else, you could always do a successful Western. So I think the stereotypes are not accepted by the young audience that goes to the movies today.
Do you think the problem lay with the directors, the producers, the writers, or who?
Well, I would say that everybody was part of a sort of silent conspiracy. They did what they thought. It's part of, I don't think it's just the films themselves. I think it's actually the attitudes that people had about Indians to begin with in Western civilization, and as they came to America. They were highly aggressive. They moved west, and the idea was to look at everything, including nature, and the Indians that I think were part of that, as alien, as threatening, and they just put it into one general blob. I don't think they began to look at Indians as what they are, which are people with a different kind of belief, but it's one that's their own. I think now everybody is changing their values.
Even if values, as Stanley Chase believes, are changing, history still reflects a powerful white bias. The Indian and what truly happened to him is left out of the white man's history books. For example, in Arthur Schlesinger Jr.'s recent book, The Age of Jackson, there's not one word about the Trail of Tears.
On this spot, on April 28, 1871, over 100 Avarapa Apaches, mostly women and children, were massacred by the citizens of Tucson. There is no marker here, no monument to the Camp Grant murder. A white rancher down the road from here said to me, "We just want to forget it."
Custer came through the Wolf Mountains the morning of June 25th. From this point that his Crow Indian scouts first identified where the Sioux Indian village was. Custer's original plan was to hold over the day of the 25th, rest his command, and then attack dawn the 26th. This is when the Army found that they were most successful against an Indian village, when they could surprise the men in the village. Then they could get the Indian men to stand on and fight on the Army's terms.
Here at the Custer National Monument, thousands of people come to learn of the great battle. There is no monument to the Indians who fought victoriously, only to Custer and the men of the 7th Cavalry. The education the public gets is strictly one-sided.
Number one, we've got to portray the history as it is. I think that's sometimes what we're guilty of. Perhaps I'm wrong. With our history period, we change it to make it convenient. I've often said, and I think it's true, it's a bitter statement, but I'm afraid it's true, is that we all remember, I would hope, My Lai and what a horrible thing that was in Vietnam. There were a lot of horrible moments in World War II, I think, that could come out. And you could go back and back and back and back through the wars and find them all pretty scary, horrible, bloody, etc. What happened here, in my knowledge and what I've read of American Indian history, My Lai's took place in this country for something like 100 years. The cavalry, you say, who's to blame, whether it was the 6th or the 5th or the 7th, 8th, doesn't seem to make a lot of difference. Whether they were foot soldiers, they went in through tents and just cut up men, women, and children, and they had orders from the United States government, and they followed those orders. And soldiers have been following orders ever since we can remember.
All right. Spare the females and children if possible. Let's go.
I read somewhere that Hitler, when he was a little kid, he used to read Western novels, and it influenced him a lot when he grew up. He started talking about wiping out another race of people. This swastika, I've heard it came from a nation out here in America, and he switched the swastika around. I forgot which way exactly it is. So he uses his symbol.
What difference does it make if a few political extremists lose their rights? What difference does it make if a few racial minorities lose their rights? It is only a passing phase. It is only a stage we are going through. It will be discarded sooner or later. Hitler himself will be discarded sooner or later. The country is in danger. We will march out of the shadows. We will go forward. Forward is the great password.
They're still treating Indian people as things to be shot at and to be knocked down and not cared about. And I think that's the worst attitude that any type of institution can have about a race of people. Hitler doing what he did to the Jews is the same as what the movie industry has done to Indian people.
For more than 10 years, Indian involvement in the media has been played against the background of a nationwide fight over Indian rights. The right to fish in the Pacific Northwest. In Navajo country, the right not to have to bus children as much as 90 miles one way to school. In Wisconsin, the Menominees' right to reverse termination in order to keep their identity as a tribe. The right to water for the Northern Cheyennes, or for the Paiutes on Pyramid Lake in Nevada. And in Maine, the rights to ancient land claims by the Passamaquoddies at the Penobscot.
The United States government made treaties with the Indians as one sovereign nation to another, and they're high-powered documents. But the United States refuses to honor their treaties. What am I going to do about it? Fight. What else can you do? You fight them in court, you fight them any way you can.
When the treaty was something that benefited them, then they wanted us to live by it, right? But now that the treaty might benefit the Indian a little bit and take away the profit from the white man, now they don't want to honor it.
To help bring national attention to legislatively focusing on a problem, I have introduced legislation in the United States Congress which will abolish all U.S. Native American treaties, and I hope help fulfill the obligation we all have to be equal citizens under the law.
The catch-22 phrase is equal citizenship for Indians. This really means that Indians have little except their treaty rights. If we can take these away and make them citizens like everyone else, they will have nothing.
This nation was built on Indian resources. And today in the United States, on 55 million acres of Indian land, you have 50% of the remaining energy resources in oil shale, coal, oil, and gas. About 60% of the uranium of the United States. There are 52 timbered Indian reservations that about 20 to 30% of the private timber is on. In the Northwest, 5 reservations produce between 600 and 700 million board feet a year. From these resources, whether it be from leases, royalties, or stumpage, 10% of the value of those dollars go into the United States Treasury. So Indian people do pay their way, just as they paid their way in the development of this nation when they gave up these lands to reserve certain areas in their treaties.
I suppose the most damaging thing to Indians today is the fact that they're fabulously rich in energy resources, and the country needs those energy resources. The 1 million Indians that control that resource, the water and the coal and the timber, are not going to be able to stand in the way of 218 million white people, especially people like Cunningham and Meads, who are really at our throats. And no one knows the real story of why. We found out that Cunningham owns land down in the Southwest, and that's where they want to take this water to, is the Southwest. And the Indians' water rights, the Winters Doctrine, is the only thing that's saving the water for all the Indians and all the white people in the Northwest.
Indian leaders have criticized you for having a personal stake in the treaty matter, that you own land in Indian country, and that you would personally benefit from the legislation you introduced. Is this true?
That's absolute hogwash. It's true that my family and I have for approximately 40 years had some farmland in Arizona. When I first heard of this charge, I did 2 things. I contacted the attorney for the water district involved, and also the congressman that represents that area, and I asked both of them whether there was any substance to that suggestion. I've received communications from both of them that state that to make such a charge is absolutely scurrilous, and that anyone having made it hasn't studied either the situation and the facts or the law.
We are a people with special rights guaranteed to us by promises and treaties. We do not beg for these rights, nor do we thank you. We do not thank you because we paid for them.
The question of Indian people and Indians themselves represent a source of revenue to the film industry. And how can we have a Western if we don't have cowboys and, quote, Indians? And how can we have a good commercial product if they don't see Indian people being killed? I mean, that's the guts of this whole issue, is that Hollywood is making money off of Indian people being killed on film.
I realize that we've been kind of hard on Hollywood films and the way Native people have been portrayed in Hollywood movies in the series Images of Indians. But, you know, the impact has been enormous on our young people. And we really feel that by showing the negative aspects of the Hollywood treatment of Indians, that we can perhaps encourage movie makers to produce films, to make films that are, in fact, positive, that show Native people as we are and as we were in the past. One of the major breakthroughs, I believe personally, that has happened in the last few years has come about because of one man. And that one man has, in fact, had a great impact on the changes which are now beginning to manifest themselves in movies and films. When Will Sampson was picked to play in the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that was the first time that a Native American has acted in a film in a role that was totally non-stereotypical. He played, in fact, a human being with feelings, with wit, with intelligence. And to my way of thinking, that's probably still the finest role that's ever been played by a Native American.
deaf and dumb. Jesus Christ. You fooled him, Chief. You fooled him. You fooled them all. Yeah. What are we doing in here, Chief? Huh? What's us two guys doing in place? Let's get out of here. Out. Canada. We'll be there before these son of a bitches know what hit them.
Truth, the lost from sight, will change the world when it's finally brought to